Well, I'll be back to discussing Thucydides and international relations realism next week, but on this holiday weekend, I thought I would take a little bit of time to discuss Christian anarchism. What is it, and why am I teaching a class on it this summer? Anarchism is a word that often elicits some pretty strong emotions, oftentimes of fear. Um, to many people, it sounds kind of weird or scary, but all that anarchism means is without government or without overarching authority. And so anarchism really implies that organization can come from below, that organization can be voluntary and free and doesn't need the heavy hand of government or corporate power to order people. And so maybe that kind of explains how the terms Christian and anarchism can go together, because in Christian anarchism, there is a strong tendency to believe that people can and should do things on their own and not wait for an organization to tell them to do so. And so, for instance, in my seminar this summer, I will be teaching through the ideas of some people that many of you guys will be familiar with, including the grand poobah of all, Leo Tolstoy, very important foundational Christian anarchist thinker. Also Jacques Ellul, whose Technological Society I've covered on this channel, but who wrote many books along the veins of Christian anarchism. Peter Morin and Dorothy Day, co-founders of the Catholic worker movement, came from a place of Christian anarchism. And actually, Dorothy Day's canonization is moving forward with the Catholic Church. It's possible that she may be declared a saint in the next few years by the Catholic Church because she sacrificed a great deal of her life to simply action for and on the behalf of the poor. So that course is going to be looking at thinkers like that, and there are many sections in the Bible, particularly though in the New Testament, where a person can read it to mean that Jesus is Lord and King, the implication being that the government, whatever government you happen to be under, is not ultimately Lord. And if there's a clash between the two, a Christian has to obey God and not the government. And so runs counter to the prevailing Christian nationalism that tends to be very common in the United States today. Christian anarchists don't worship the president or the government. They worship God, and Jesus is God, and therefore Jesus is Lord or King Jesus in the parlance of some Christian anarchist thinkers. So I would just caution that a lot of times, because of the term anarchism, people have all sorts of thoughts that maybe aren't even accurate, and that it's well worth looking into. Now, what I found out was that, at least as far as I could tell, there is no reader for Christian anarchism, in the sense that no one's ever put together a book full of a collection of selections or works of Christian anarchists, where you can go to one book and read the original works. There are some books, very good scholarly books about Christian anarchism, though. And so I will be recommending one or two of them for people to read, and then I'll be putting together some primary sources. But for instance, some of the topics of this course, which is going to go over 5-week period of time, just meeting on Saturdays, are, of course, the basics of anarchism, and then Christian anarchism in particular. And then I'll have a day on Christian anarchism confronting the state, because yes, indeed, there is a clash between both the Christian anarchism and the state and corporate power, for the very reason that these thinkers believe that Christians should not be hindered by some authority figure in doing what they need to do, and shouldn't be looking to some sort of organization, government, corporations, or even the church itself as an organization to do things for them, on behalf of them, towards the poor or towards their neighbors, but rather they should be helping each other and then bringing in their neighbors into that community, that voluntary mutual aid community. Also, Christian anarchists are very strong on nonviolence, and I have to tell you, this is not my natural instinctual position, but the more I've read of Christian anarchists, the more I am convinced that at the very least, nonviolence is what is required by a faithful reading of the New Testament and of Christ's teachings. Very difficult to follow, especially in certain circumstances, but that doesn't mean that that statement isn't basically true. So Christian anarchists get us to really confront that reality of nonviolence or pacifism as the preferred mode. And it is a strategy of nonviolence, because not only is it just a moral duty to react with nonviolence, even in the face of violence, but also it is a strategy designed to defuse the aggressor. Again, this is one of the more problematic areas, and I'm sure we can all think of scenarios where that might not work, or indeed where we couldn't do it in practice. But again, that doesn't mean that it isn't the moral standard to strive for. I'll be looking at, I have 2 weeks on Praxis. The first one will be Utopian Christian Communities in the United States and abroad. And then I'll focus in on the Catholic workers in the final unit, and it will be the theme of Catholic worker versus the church, because churches have tended to keep Catholic worker houses of hospitality and farms at kind of arm's length. They have supported them in some ways, but Catholic worker is often unheard of in Catholic churches and other churches. A lot of people wouldn't even know what that is, and yet there are places all around the world that are carrying on this tradition. And many of them are run by Protestants, not just Catholics, and even by people who aren't of any particular religious persuasion, but believe that direct action to aid the poor is what people ought to do. So anyway, what is Christian anarchism? It is literally Christians acting spontaneously and voluntarily to build community amongst themselves and towards other people, and to help each other out. Not writing checks, not voting in a voting booth, not campaigning, not doing parades, not pledging allegiance, but actually just doing what Christians sort of do, at least as it would seem to be asked of us by the Jesus of the Gospels. That class of Christian anarchism, if you're interested in it, I will put a link below to where you can sign up or you can find more information. But that class is something I'm very excited about, and it's coming under the Morin Academy, which is a new organization that Spencer Hess and I have co-founded. And under the Morin Academy will also come the podcast Dust Bowl Diatribes. And you will be hearing the first episode of Dust Bowl Diatribes on this channel, because I will be posting that podcast. I will be, reposting it here. So you'll be able to listen to it on this channel, as well as you can get it on iTunes, Spotify, and probably other podcast providers as time goes by. So keep in mind Dust Bowl Diatribes. That will drop this weekend as well. So check it out. We will be telling you a little bit more about ourselves, about who we are as people and why we're doing all this, and some of the reasons why we named the podcast Dust Bowl Diatribes, what that really means to us. And we have a very, I guess, thought-provoking theme song that we unpack on that podcast. So anyway, I hope you consider Christian anarchism, not just the class, but the concept. And I will be posting parts of the class this summer, just like I did last summer, 10, 15-minute segments of what I do in that class, so you guys can get it that way as well. I hope that it intrigues you, and again, I will be back next week with more on Thucydides.